All right, everyone. Sorry for the delay. There were internet issues. This is Mary Rooke from the Daily Caller. We're going to be discussing a few political issues, but also mainly the rigged documentary that has actually been put out. The trailer has been pinned at the top if you're watching on YouTube. It's also over there in chat if you're on Rumble. Cross-platform, I will put it in the description retroactively. So if you're not watching live, I'll put it in there. I unfortunately neglected to put it in there preemptively. And so how are you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah, no, it's fun. And so first I wanted to get your opinion about the documentary itself. And we were discussing it briefly just moments ago before we went live. I watched it and I thought it was really good, actually. My favorite part, I think, was the Sam Bankman-Fried involvement and some of like the financial shenanigans that went on in the 2020 election that, yeah, I mean, you could even discuss those on YouTube back when they banned people from questioning the election results. This is how severe that they were. I wanted your thoughts, though, on that.
Right. One, I just thought it was really beautifully done. I thought the picture quality, the audio, everything really set the stage for how important this next election is going to be. I mean, we've already seen what happened in 2020, and this kind of just set the tone for that. And then talking about the financial stuff, the most glaring issue, I think that something that we don't really talk about in mainstream, narratives at all is the fact that the election came down to at least about three mega donors. Mark Zuckerberg and about two other guys put $450 million into the 2020 election. And why this is so serious is it completely reshaped the election infrastructure. Now, that is what they claimed they wanted to do, but instead of having it be spread out between red states and blue states or red counties and blue counties equally, it was funneled almost entirely into Democrat counties. And so it was a massive get out the vote for Democrats only. And instead of, kind of championing the democracy and what, Democrats love to say, we're trying to save democracy and we're championing this and we really just want to bring it home, guys. It's really what they're saying is we want our voters to come out. We want the people that we know will vote blue all the way down the line, and that's where they funneled their money. And this was the first election in history that we ever saw something like that happen. And the good thing is that there have been several red states that have kind of combated that. They put in election laws to kind of combat what they call Zuckerbucks. And I know Oklahoma was one. And, those are really great places. But I think that what people aren't understanding is that it's easy for that stuff to happen again. The pandemic really paved the way. It allowed for all of these shenanigans to go on unchecked or unnoticed. And it felt like Republicans were always on the back foot, whether it was for legal reasons or financial reasons. We were always like playing catch up to whatever the Democrats were doing. And it's very hard to catch up to $450 million just for get out the vote. We're not talking about for any other initiative. We're not talking about funneling into certain campaigns or, certain areas. We're talking about just to get out the vote.
And I think it was wasn't it Bloomberg actually? He spent $100 million. I can't remember whether it was Texas or Florida, specifically in one of those states to try to influence the election. And I remember a time, and I don't know if you do, because you look a little bit younger than me. Do you remember a time when the Democratic Party was the party of not wanting huge money in elections?
Yeah.
And they spurned it and they said, no, we're the party of the people. We get small donors. Somebody sent me $20 and this business sent me $100 and stuff like that. I can remember that time. And now it's completely inverted. The Republicans right now are basically broke. And part of that is that they've got no corporate backing.
Well, if you see Republicans now, they're very much on the line of, look, I've raised $100,000 over this term period, and it's all from donations $10 or less or $15 or less. And it's a very proud moment for them because the last thing the American people want to see is these mega donors being, funneling into these certain campaigns. And there's like a joke that you can look at Chuck Schumer and he should have to wear like a NASCAR jacket for all the corporations that are on top of him and spending money in his way, and that's really what the Democratic Party is now. They rely on big, heavy donations because they don't have the power of the American people behind them. If you look at the union, the auto workers union, the big boss came out and said, yeah, you know what? We're putting off our full force behind Joe Biden for the 2024 election. However, I have to admit, the majority of our workers are not going to be voting for Joe Biden. Like, the majority of our workers are going to be voting for the Republican ticket, because the first thing that Trump did was he said, you are not going to forward any more of your manufacturing plants and put them in Mexico. And if you do that, I'm going to tax and tariff the absolute living crap out of your cars. You will have to spend so much more money bringing them from Mexico and bringing them back into the US than you ever have before. And what did Ford do? They repaid the American people for Trump's stand on that and said, okay, we're going to keep our Detroit factory open. We're going to keep our, I think it was in Grand Rapids, and then also one in Ohio that they kept open, or that they opened up. And it's those type of policies that blue collar workers want to see. I mean, we used to be a nation where you did not have to have a college degree in order to be able to have a successful household where it was a one income and you could raise a family and own a home and send your kids to college and do all of that kind of stuff. And we're no longer there. I mean, if you're not a YouTube streamer, or if you're not on TikTok, then you have to go to college in order to make money, because you cannot do that being a bank teller anymore. You cannot do that being an auto worker anymore. You can't, plumbers are like one of the few bastions of safety, electricians probably as well, but name another blue collar job where you could.
Carpenters would come to mind.
Yeah,
architecture or something like that. Yeah, it's actually sad actually how that's become a thing, because people who do a shit ton of work, they don't get any advance for it, and most of the jobs that are being created right now are second jobs, part-time gigs.
Yeah.
And side hustles and stuff like that under Bidenomics, so that people can, and then that's the best case scenario, is that somebody who is on the lower middle class, working class, they manage to get that second job to pay the rent and to pay for the groceries under Bidenflation, and everyone else is taking out credit card debt.
Yeah, and
this is normally a rise in debt, in credit card debt, is like, okay, people feel optimistic. They think they can make the payments, and so they're buying luxury items or something. But now it's more like out of sheer necessity, because they couldn't find a
how else
job.
are you going to pay for your $500 grocery bill for your family of six without using your credit card every month? And then on top of that, the Daily Caller just reported this great piece about how it was either almost 1 million or just over 1 million jobs that Biden claims he created in like the last year were fake. Like, they weren't actually real new jobs.
And then they have to readjust it too.
And then
they always retroactively lower the number too.
Just like mainstream media likes to do with their stealth editing. Did you see the piece? I think it was the New York Times yesterday, that whenever her report came out and talked about Biden's mental capacity and how they weren't going to charge him with these crimes that he had committed because they didn't think he was mentally competent to stand trial. When that came out, the New York Times wrote a Republicans pounce piece where, they said, Republicans pounce on the idea that Biden isn't mentally fit. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, that headline changes to, some quote from Biden's press conference that he did later that night, to being like, Biden's defending himself. It's like the American people aren't falling for this anymore. Maybe New York Times readers, I'll grant them that, are probably falling for it, because if you're still reading the New York Times as if it's Bible, then you are going to fall for something like that. But regular everyday Americans are looking at that going, I am not going to sit here and take your BS anymore. Like, it's just lies that come from you.
Well, what I always point out is that all of the shenanigans aside from the Biden admin, who works literally with like CNN and groups like that, they've bragged about it, especially in economic news. Darcy said that last February, it was about a year ago, last February. Despite all that, people buy their own groceries. Unless they're so rich that they're not going to be impacted by the Bidenflation, in which case they don't really care. Otherwise, they go to the store. I get sticker shock all the time.
Yeah.
I go to the store. I'm like, let me get some Brussels sprouts. Oh, $5. Oh, thank you very much. Something that used to cost 99 cents. And before people say it's like a sign of the times thing, okay, the costs rise over time. It's a very large amount in a very short period of time. I'm aware of the difference between the two.
For sure. I mean, I'm a mother of 4, and whenever I
Mm-hmm.
go to the grocery store, and it was actually, I had this really great interaction with this woman the other day. So close to us, that we have this grocery store called Central Market, and it's a little bit more expensive than, say, a Tom Thumb or a Kroger or whatever one of the national chains is.
I don't know what a Tom Thumb is, just to be clear.
Okay, it's very popular.
Probably the equivalent of our Hannaford's.
Probably, or like a Jewel Osco. I don't know if you're like up in the Mideast or something like that. So it's kind of similar to those types of places in Albertsons. And so anyways, but I love going there because when you walk in, it doesn't smell like there's rotten produce everywhere. And it happens to be the cheapest produce around. It's great and it's cheap. However, when I went to go and get lemons, it was something crazy, like 2 lemons for $4. And I remember
that's higher than here.
I remember when my oldest daughter was 1, being able to get like 5 lemons for $1. And I actually like exclaimed like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe how expensive this is." And the lady next to me was like, "Yes, but it's the cheapest produce in town. Like, I know that this store is like known for its high prices, but the produce, I've mapped it out everywhere." And so it's not just me. Like it's everyone is looking around going, where did all the money go? Like, how is it that everything is so expensive? So when you have Biden coming on the television telling us that he's solved our economic crisis and how he's helped the American people and all this stuff, it's like, in what way? Maybe the transfer from the middle class to the wealthy class, maybe he's talking straight to the wealthy class and being like, "I helped y'all. Thank you very much. This is what I've done for you." Because the middle class is not feeling that. The middle class is feeling the squeeze more than ever.
I like how they tried to blame it on Trump too. Like they talked about the original bailout plan during the lockdown period. They said, well, that created all the inflation. And I was thinking to myself, okay, but at some point you have to stop blaming the last administration because you've been in power for now years and years. You're running for re-election, supposedly. It's like, at what point is it your fault?
Right. And how are you going to explain away 7% interest rates to buy a new home when under Trump prices were low, interest rates were low, you could still buy a home without having to sell your kidney in order to be able to afford it? Like,
imagine you locked in a fixed rate mortgage and you're rubbing your hands together right now.
Oh, I know. My mom actually talks about that now too, because we actually just moved from one state to another. So we had to buy a new house, and we had to buy a new house with the extremely high interest rates. And so of course I'm gagging on it. And my mom is sitting there like, haha, look at me. I've got this, 2.6% interest rate, and it's the lowest you could ever get. And then, and she's just so proud of herself. And I'm like, yeah, chuck it up. Okay. This is what millions of Americans, at least my husband and I, could afford to do that. We are in a position to be able to do that. And I know how lucky we are. Mm-hmm. I could not imagine if you are struggling and you are just doing everything you can to get ahead, and then you finally have the down payment to be able to get a home, only to look at the interest rate and go, well, I'm priced out of the homes that I want. So every home that I get now has to be on the other side of town. It's got to be 1 bedroom less. It's got to have no yard. You have to start having to make concessions in order to buy it, just because the interest rate is going to raise your mortgage price so much higher.
I'm imagining being a Zoomer right now and how screwed up that must be. Like the millennials got manhandled, but the Zoomers somehow they've managed to have it worse.
It feels like it's getting worse every generation. I'm one of 9 girls, and so we kind of span from like later Gen X to right before Zoom. And so all of my sisters, they're kind of just like talking to my oldest one, like, we get it now. Like, we get why you're so angry. We get why you just want to be left alone. Because
who wouldn't be?
Yeah, it's like, why would anyone feel a sense of pride in where they live or they work if they have a hard time even affording just the basic necessities? Or if every time you're turning around, you're having to make another concession?
Yeah, and that's Bidenomics in a nutshell. So,
and I think that like, to bring it back to the Rig documentary, I think that is why, something like that is so important, because people look around and they really are confused. They're like, hold on. I thought we were being told that the adults were back in charge. I thought we were being told that, everything was going to go back to normal and all of this stuff. And that's why you see, I think, polling that shows that people are more inclined to say the 2020 election was stolen or rigged now than they did even in 2020. Even being able to see the pizza boxes being put up on the windows and the counting stopping in the middle of the night and the fake pipe bursts and all of the outside
the counting stopping and the mail-in the next day was what really got me, because the night of, Trump was ahead in all of the competitive states, and it just happened they magically managed to manifest a few 100,000 ballots. That's all that they needed.
It was
just the right places.
Exactly.
Not even a million votes. And I called it, like on election night. I said, okay, basically stick a fork in it. It's done. Trump has clearly won here.
Same.
He's got a 6-figure margin in these states. He's won. It's basically the same map as 2016. And then, but Bloomberg, a couple of weeks before the election results, and you may remember this, he said, well, it's going to look like a red wave on election night, but then the mail-in ballots are going to start coming in. Oh, how predictive.
Yeah.
It's almost like the person that's in the know and funds half of these motherfuckers is aware of what's going on.
Exactly. And that was a scary part. I think the documentary does a really good job of breaking down the mail-in ballot issue. So part of the issues that we talk about is the fact that the election was actually decided by 6 states. And so it wasn't the whole United States. There could have been issues everywhere, and there probably were. But it was 6 states that became really important, and they knew exactly which ones they needed in order to win. And the problem is that it was 10,000 votes in 5 of them, and I think 11,000 in Georgia that actually ended up deciding the 2020 election.
Yeah, it was less than a million votes. It's a drop in the bucket of the voting population, less than 1%.
And there's not a single sane American who is not a progressive ideologue that looks at Joe Biden and says he won the most votes in U.S. history. I'm sorry. There's just, if you look me straight in the eyes and you tell me that you truly believe that, I will want to put you in an insane asylum. Like,
well, Joe Biden might be headed there too, so he'll be in good company.
Oh my gosh, can you even imagine? What's going on?
We'll definitely be riffing. We'll definitely have to riff on the DOJ a little bit. Oh, God.
What's going on behind the scenes in the White House today after they wheeled him out in that press conference? And then now you have Joe and Mika Kelly, they're like, no, look, he's so smart. He's the smartest man I've ever met in my life. It's like when Joe said that his cracked out son Hunter was the best person he knew, or what, it's like, no, he
really meant Bo. But the funny part, the funniest part of that presser was he confused the name of the Egyptian president with the president of Mexico while trying to refer to the president of Israel.
Yes.
And so it's like a triple fudging of what's going on. And I didn't even know exactly what he was talking about at times.
There was literally
I'm like, okay, all right, Joe.
There were some really great memes that showed the Gaza portion over there in the Middle East. And then it had Israel on one spot, and then it had Mexico. It's and there was this is what Joe Biden thinks the world looks like.
I literally couldn't believe it.
No,
with the DOJ report corroborating, and Biden's DOJ, these are his people. They're not hostile towards him. They're people that in some cases he appointed, saying, well, we can't charge him. His memory is too bad. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm imagining Donald Trump. He's on his jet and he sees the news live, right? And he's furrowing his brow and knuckling his forehead. God damn, why didn't I think of that? All I had to do was pretend to not know where I was.
He could not have planned, honestly, for a better day for him yesterday. If you're Trump, you have the Supreme Court just absolutely crucifying Colorado in front of the nation and pretty much telling any other state, don't bring this stupid mess to our door. This is an unintelligent way to try and take a man out. Don't bring this to my door. And
we might get a 9-0 on that one.
I think that it is going to either be 9-0 or 8-1. I mean,
Ketanji might hold out.
Yeah, that's the only one, because she really is an ideologue, and she's one of the ones that would just vote no, just to vote no. But you're not getting Alito. He's voting. Yeah. He's voting.
They'll side with Trump. It's fairly clear. The thing that I was chuckling about this morning was actually a lot of people wanted, especially Clarence Thomas, because they don't like black people. Yeah. But also the Trump-appointed justices to recuse themselves. But you'd be looking at a situation in a 9-0 where it wouldn't even matter.
Right.
Even an entirely liberal court with maybe Roberts there at most would still probably vote along the side of Trump. I'm just hoping that it's a narrow ruling, because otherwise then some tyrant can come along, break the law for real, and then not get disqualified from office. So
I thought the craziest part of the argument yesterday was when the Colorado lawyer said something like that Trump had all the chance in the world to prove that he didn't commit an insurrection. And then Robert said something like, but he's never been charged or convicted of it, correct? Or something like that. And then the guy had to admit, well, yes, I mean, officially he hasn't been convicted of an insurrection. He's like, yes. And there is a statute, and then he names a congressional statute that would hold Trump accountable if he had been convicted of it. And then the guy had to like sheepishly say yes. And then Clarence Thomas comes around and he's like, even during the Civil War, have you ever seen something like this happen? And the guy's like, no, no, you know, and then he has to like give up on that. I think it's just not everyone can be Mark Elias, and Mark Elias can't be everything for the Dems. But
Clarence Thomas is having a field day. You can tell he's enjoying it too.
Well, he's
like normally he's fairly dour, but he sounds like his spirit has been uplifted. He's enjoying the current situation.
Think about everything that his family has been through. I mean, first, just to get the job, he had to go through that horrendous process, and then.
And Biden was, and people, everyone out there, remember, Joe Biden was one of the linchpins of trying to crucify Clarence Thomas and claim he was a rapist.
Every single time I have to do a story on Clarence Thomas, I rewatch his rebuttal to Joe Biden, because it really reminds me of what a snake Joe is. Like you cannot sit there and tell me that you are a good person and do that to a man, and do that knowing, and he's sitting there telling you that his mother hasn't been able to get out of bed for days because she's got the FBI telling him that, you know, he's done these horrible crimes against a woman. And Joe's like, well, that's part of the process. And it's like, that actually isn't part of the process, Joe. You're supposed to be deciding whether or not this guy can, you know, handle court cases and handle the, you know, the mental load of being a Supreme Court. It's not throwing wild accusations out and ruining a guy's reputation. That's not the actual process. But that's our political system in a nutshell now. And what does honor even mean anymore? You know, when everybody is just as corrupt as each other.
Well, Biden never had any honor. I mean, you look at him, he was the tough on crime senator, but then he's the defund the police president for a while. But then he's, no, man, I want to tamp down on crime. We're doing a good job and stuff like that. And it's like, he's all over the place. Messaging wise, even beyond like the 2020 election stuff, it's just like, I'm hoping that liberals can understand ex post facto in general, that you were sold a pig in a poke. Like, okay, you voted for Joe before, you had Trump derangement syndrome, or you're just a standard like Democrat small d or whatever. Oh, okay, that's perfectly fine. We can understand. Can you please acknowledge the fact that you made a mistake? And like, let's just get over it, get by it, get Trump back in office, and hopefully things will improve. Like, that's our best chance.
I think that we would be wishing for too much for that. We can't even get people to apologize for what they did in COVID and locking us away from our families and calling us disgusting and all of the things for not getting vaccinated or not wanting to wear a mask or not.
We have to be careful. We have to be careful on a YouTube live stream, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. That's perfectly fine. We just got to be.
I forget, you know, I forget that it's 2024 and I forget we're still so locked down like that. But to my point, I think that we are asking for too much, because to get the people that were willing to do that, to come around and say, also, we were wrong about the Russian collusion hoax. We were wrong about all of these things. We actually understand the economy's in the shitter. We actually understand that, you know, there's nothing that we can do except for just vote someone else into office. I think that they'll go silently into the booth and check a different box. But I think that actually having them come out and announce or say that they've done something wrong. I think that the funniest thing that's coming out of this election and everything that's going on is, have you noticed how many like mainstream like rap and pop idols and all of these people that are like tiptoeing into like conservative waters, or at least into like pro-Trump waters? Like, even, did you see Meek Mill came out yesterday and was like, he quote tweeted Tucker's interview, or not the interview, but like his explanation on why he was doing the interview with Putin. And he said something like, why doesn't everybody just chill out and let's just watch the interview and see what it's going to be like before we come to judgment on it? He was like, I don't want to get into another war we can't afford, or something crazy like that. And I'm like, this is Meek Mill. Like, this isn't, someone that you would expect to be, maybe not even kills, probably not the right word for it, but just like so open-minded when it comes to that kind of stuff. I mean, it doesn't even have to do with Trump, but this is like the Ukraine war. Why does he care about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but it affects everyone.
I have noticed that but that happened in 2016 too. A lot of people sort of got on the Trump train. I think some of them, it wasn't really ideological. It was mainly, hey, I'm going to get attention.
Yeah.
The news will want to interview me. My brand expands and I can sell more product or something. I don't know that it's all necessarily genuine. And Taylor Swift, of course, moving in the other direction fairly rapidly. But yeah, I've noticed that. But as far as tiptoeing into the waters, then you've got people like Ted Nugent or Kid Rock. They just dive right in.
I know, but I feel like they're kind of, they're the stereotypical rock star in the sense that they were never really going to do what the mainstream media told them to do anyways. And so
I feel like, to Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
Fuck you, do what they tell you.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the saddest thing is that some of the people that I thought would be kind of more against what the big media corps or whatever are saying are very much into it, like Howard Stern. I mean, he's always been kind of insufferable to me because I don't find his content to be, worthwhile for me to watch, but I never expected him to be so like gung-ho for every narrative, not just like one or two of them, but for every narrative. It's like, do you not think for yourself anymore? You were kind of the guy that was like, F the man, I'm going to do what I want to do. But now he's like sitting there telling us all of the things that you can literally hear on MSNBC or CNN.
Yeah, 20 years ago, he was throwing baloney at strippers' asses. And now I expect him to have a book on women's rights or something like that.
Right. It's kind of insane. I think that when it comes to the 2024 election, there are a lot of things that Americans need to be looking out for. One of the things is there are several states that didn't change their absentee ballot situation. We're looking at Arizona. We're looking at Nevada. We're looking at some of these kind of peripheral states that Republicans will need to have to win.
On that token, really quickly, sure. Do you have of those battleground states, so Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, et cetera, do you have sort of like a rundown for people here? Which of those states have defortified and to what degree? Because that would be helpful to people, because I know a few of them are still fully fortified. It's going to be mainly mail-in shenanigans, but I think a couple of them, I think Georgia was one of them, at least.
Georgia did a lot of work. There's still some more needs to be done, but I do know that. So I think the biggest thing for Republicans to look out for, like Georgia, Pennsylvania did some work. There's actually a special election coming up in Pennsylvania, and let me look up the person's name because it's going to be really a big deal. I don't know if you follow Scott Pressler at all.
Yes, I've spoken with him.
Okay, he is great. And he just announced that there is a special election coming up that is going to be very important. It's for State House District 140. It's on Tuesday, February 13th. So if you are a Republican and you are registered to vote, you need to go out and vote on February 13th. Our candidate is Republican Candace, I think it's Cabanas, Cabanas. And if we flip this seat and we take that puts the Pennsylvania State House red as opposed to blue. And if anybody remembers, one of the biggest things that happened in the 2020 election was that the state changed up their election laws in an illegal way. They have to go through, I think, a constitutional amendment. Now, it could be wrong about that, but I think it has to be a constitutional amendment, or they have to put it to vote for a certain amount of votes for the actual, the voters to decide on. And they didn't. They just unilaterally changed their election laws in order to open up mail-in drop boxes and absentee ballots and all of that stuff. That's the reason why you saw places like Philadelphia doing the same thing that happened in Georgia, where, the place shut down and then all of a sudden, whoa, Philly found another 100,000 votes or whatever it was, and Pennsylvania flips. And you kind of expect these bluer cities to go Democrat. That's You're never going to flip Philadelphia, at least probably not in the next 10 years. But the surrounding counties, that's what you're looking at. And when all of your election stuff gets centralized into these big bluer cities that where Republicans have very little control over. I mean, they were kicking out election watchers, they were kicking out election lawyers, and then they would have to take it up to a judge and fight it, and then they'd get put back in, but then 24 hours has gone by. And what kind of shenanigans have gone by in 24 hours that no one can even look at? And that was one of the things we talked about in Rigged. It's like, you don't even have to know that something happened. You can see that there's a room full of 100,000 ballots with very little protection, no oversight. Poll watchers are not allowed to be in there. What's happening to those ballots? And the American people are looking at that going, you're right. What is happening to those ballots? But whenever we talk about it, and we want to hear about that kind of stuff or get some more information on it, and you're stopped by places like streaming services like YouTube and the mainstream media and all of that stuff, and they're demonetizing accounts or kicking them off completely, just trying to uncover these issues, that's when you wake up and you go, oh my gosh, the people that are saying they want to save democracy are actually the ones working to dismantle it in such a dangerous way. When a country as important and powerful as America cannot trust the individual vote, that is when the world is unsafe.
I always found the election denial so-called policy of like YouTube and similar sites very funny too, because you're allowed to question the Hungarian election. You can question the results of the Brazilian election.
Or
nobody
El
cares.
Salvador.
Yeah, nobody cares if you say, well, Vladimir Putin probably didn't get 95% of the vote, which would be true. But only in one particular country are you not allowed to actually question the results, and only for one election. If you want to say, well, 2016, Donald Trump cheated with the Russians, the Kremlin helped him win, nobody ever banned you for that. It was only the 2020 election, one single election, using the so-called insurrection as an excuse, which is partially, I think, the subject in Rigged too.
Yes, and one of the funny things that got brought up the other day is whenever Biden went to Manassas for one of his campaign stops, and he was like, I got to talk to the real governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe. Yes. And it's okay for him to say that. But if I were to stand up and say, oh, the real president of the United States is Donald Trump, if I were to say that, then all of a sudden you get kicked off everywhere. And
on Meta, I think the rule is still in effect. They relinquished that on YouTube, but I think on Meta, it's still their stated policy, I think.
And that's the crazy part, because Meta is owned by who? Mark Zuckerberg. And who was
He's not a human being. He's a cyborg, just to be clear. That is not disinformation. He got Neuralink before it was fashionable.
Okay, so did you see that part in the Tucker Putin video where he said that he thinks that Elon Musk he said that Elon Musk has already put Neuralink inside a human brain, and then he was like, but we're not going to get into all the AI stuff. We're not going to get into all of that stuff, because I think you have to know a little bit more than I do on it. And I was like, I think that's the first time I've ever heard Putin say he doesn't know everything about a subject.
Yeah, no, the interview was actually pretty fascinating.
I thought it was
the first 30 minutes were basically Putin talking about Poland for the most part.
Yeah,
he did gloss over the whole Stalin-Hitler pact thing with regards to the Polish. I noticed there was a lie by omission there from him.
He was very much like, Stalin might have been a bad guy. Maybe, probably not. I don't know. Critics say.
I have my criticisms of Joe Stalin.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was really, really well done. I know a lot of people were worried that Tucker was going to give some sort of softball interview or whatever, but no, I thought it was great. And even that 30 minutes where he riffed on Russian history and all of that, how it became a country and everything, I thought that was so well done, because what it gave you a view in is, one, the history behind Russia. That's the obvious point. But two, how Putin views Russia. And I think that the thing is that it's foreign for a lot of Americans who have been stripped of their patriotism or stripped of the reason why they love this country. I'm a 9th generation Texan. My family has been here forever. One of my great-great-grandfathers was one of the first Texas Rangers, but we came over. I think my sister said that she's been able to track our genealogy back to like 1710. in America. We fought in the American Revolution. We fought in the American Civil War. I mean, we fought in every war that America has been a part of to become a country. And so my pride for this country swells within me. I am one of those people that get teary-eyed whenever you hear a good national anthem. I mean, I will always be that way. So when I heard Putin talk about Russia, first, I find him to be kind of abhorrent, just as a person. I wish that, there were decisions that he's made that I don't agree with. However, I see and understand the way he talks about Russia, because that is the way I talk about America. And whenever you have an election like 2020, it shocked someone like me to my core, because although I grew up and knew about the hanging Chad and understood the problems with all of that stuff, I guess it never really occurred to me that it could be real, that there could be real instances of voter or of election issues that could sway elections the way it did. And when we went to bed knowing Trump won and got up, and all of a sudden a week later they were finding votes, 10 days later, and all of these states that were 100% going towards Trump are now being closer neck and neck, and then flipping to Biden. You're going, how can this even be? And I'm not the only American that feels that way, even though a lot of people in my generation probably don't feel that sense of pride or don't understand where their roots of this country come. I mean, we took a vast wilderness and we tamed it. And that is not something that a lot of people can say. I mean, this nation, Texas alone, you can fit other countries inside it, 2 or 3 of them, and it still has
Texas alone is the size of France or Germany.
Exactly. And
people don't realize how vast the area is sometimes.
And what Americans had to do to tame it, and what Americans had to do to build it into the superpower of the world. And so whenever you're looking at all of that kind of stuff, and then you couple it with what happened in 2020, you start getting a sense that your country is slipping straight from your fingers. And
I get that. Definitely. I feel that same sense. Yeah.
It was one of my sisters. She is probably more center than I am. And even she'll talk about it now, where it was 2020 was the moment that kind of woke her up. It was, I was, obviously on that track for a while, but 2020, both with the pandemic and then with the election and all the rioting. I mean, the rioting alone, that was
those were fiery, but mostly peaceful. CNN told me so.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm really hoping we're not going to see any more fiery, but mostly peaceful of that coming along this year, because I'm afraid they're going to try and do some sort of black swan event. But whenever you see all of that stuff happening, and then you have, your progressive friends or, coworkers or whatever telling you it's justified, you're going, how is that justified? How can you honestly say burning a city to the ground is justified? All of those kinds of things, they're explaining away everything that was destroying your country, but you have no recourse. You have no way to fight against it. But just to bring it back to the documentary, that was the best part, I think, of the documentary, because it really took a lot of the fears. I mean, it was a lot of the lesser talked about points, how they hid the Hunter Biden laptop. I mean, one guy talks about it in there about how they did a poll that showed, they polled independents and Democrats and kind of center liberals and asked them, if you had known the truth about this laptop, if you had been told about it, a lot of them didn't even know about it. I mean, everybody that was terminally online knew about it, because it got silenced on Twitter, it got silenced on Facebook, it got silenced everywhere. And once it did that, it had the Streisand effect, and we all heard about it.
That's the problem. The thing is, they were in there, and this has been analyzed, they were in echo chambers where it was never discussed. And so they genuinely, a lot of them genuinely thought that the Hunter Biden laptop thing was nothing more than a conspiracy theory. I was trying to convince people at the time, I'm like, no, look, here's a report. They've got the actual content. Here's a photograph of Joe Biden meeting with someone he swears up and down he never met with. And they still wouldn't, 99% of them would not come around. They wouldn't acknowledge the reality that was real.
when the Daily Caller was one of the first media companies to independently verify the laptop's contents and ensure that this was the real deal. And I remember talking to one of my very close friends and saying, "This is real. This is an actual thing," and her laughing in my face. "Why haven't I heard about it on CNN?" And I'm like, "You're not going to hear about this on CNN. Have you not woken up yet? Like, what is even happening right now?" I mean, take aside all of the crazy pictures, okay? Just ignore all of like the coke on the prostitutes and like the crack pipes in the
And possibly his niece.
and oh my gosh, like
Unfortunately.
that part is just so heartbreaking. The family is troubled in such a degree, but if you ignore all of that stuff, when you start getting into the correspondence and it starts saying, "Thank you so much for letting me meet your father the other day or connecting me with your father, and then here's 10% for the big guy," and then you have Tony Bobolinsky coming out and saying, "I'm corroborating all of this stuff and more. Let me give you more of this evidence." When was the last time you've ever even heard of him? When was the last time you have heard of any of the evidence that he presented or was able to talk about? You just haven't. It has been completely shut out because the reality is the president of the United States is compromised to such a degree that the American people still have no idea. Like, we only know about what was in the contents of that one laptop. What else is there to know? And I think that that is a fair question for Americans to be asking, but you won't hear that on mainstream media. And so people who are not online, who are not on Twitter, now X, and who are not sitting there getting their information from independent sources because they still trust the mainstream media to tell them what to do, are not going to know that stuff is actually out there and happening. And so that's the good part about Rigged, is that it's not afraid to tell you about it. It's not afraid to break down the laptop and how these people saw it. I mean, one of the reporters for the New York Post, she is talking to us about it, and she's sitting there and she's like, I was 26 years old on the day before we were about to publish this. And I am sitting there going, oh my gosh, my whole life is about to change. Like, what is about to happen to me now? Because this is the biggest story of our lifetime. And then within hours of it being published, it's ripped off the internet.
The funny part is, the bigger the story, sometimes the less likely it is to be reported by the mainstream media. And I have a theory about this. You remember I mentioned when Oliver Darcy last year, about a year ago, I think it was February of last year, or maybe the year before, I can't remember, it's been a blur, said that was bragging on Twitter about how CNN and certain other legacy media groups, they were coordinating directly with the White House on economic messaging. So the idea that the way they framed it was, well, the economy is better than people think, and we're just trying to convince them of that. So we're working with the White House to try to make that a thing. I have a theory that it goes way beyond economic messaging, and they're getting talking points from the White House and people adjacent to it on literally everything. And the Hunter Biden laptop, 2020, basically foreign policy, certainly. I mean, I've seen some crazy spin stories over the last year with regards to Ukraine and Taiwan, Guyana potentially, ECOWAS, all of these other places. And sometimes, and Daily Caller doesn't do this because it's not part of the core legacy media. I don't think
they hate us for it. They hate us for it.
You're not sucking Biden off, or Kamala potentially. I believe that there's a lot more coordination going on behind the scenes. It's just not admitted to, basically.
Oh, I think they come out and admit it perfectly. I mean, anytime you see a press conference and you've got, KGP being softballed by, oh gosh, what's her name from C-SPAN? And they're just like, this is just such a historic moment to have you up there. And KGP is literally the worst communicator on the planet.
She makes Jen Psaki look good somehow.
That's a crazy part. It's like, you honestly didn't think that you could get worse than her. And then KGP's like, hold my beer. Don't worry, I've got one right for you. And then you have three soldiers that circle die.
Back around chick,
right. And you have three soldiers that die, and then KGP's like stumbling over her words to just say, we're mourning this loss. It's a terrible loss for the United States. She can't even mess with that. She's like, well, they died for the administration. And then every person with a tinfoil hat is going, we knew you were communist. We knew you were socialist. We knew you were Marxist, because what else are you supposed to think when someone's like, you didn't die for your country, you died for the administration? And how did the parent, how do you feel as a parent? And at what point do you sit back and you go, our country is an unhealthy country? I say this a lot. You can always tell the health of a country on whether or not their women are dying on the front lines. And you have Ukraine supposedly conscribing women now. And you look at that and you go, okay, they've killed off all their men. And so now they're going to have to use their women in order to continue this war with Russia. And then it's like, you're kind of like, well, we would never do that. And then all of a sudden it's like these young women are dying. And at what point do Democrats wake up and go, I don't want that to happen? Like,
I have a feeling, a sneaking suspicion that Trump is very likely to win re-election. I maybe get your thoughts on that too, but we've got a super chat here that I wanted to address briefly. Dashing Rogue saying the chain of custody was broken. This is about the laptop. For all we know, the laptop was cloned and added a bunch of extra content that we cannot verify is actually real. And you can weigh in on this in a second, but what I would say is, but we've got photographic and video evidence and a corroboration of all the emails. So all of the interesting content is corroborated. Anything else, involving Hunter smoking crack or something is fairly self-evident, because I think that predates deep fakes that would generally be believed. But maybe your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I direct that guy or girl to the James Lynch is reporting for the Daily Caller. If you just type in Daily Caller James Lynch and go to his byline and look up anything that he's reported on all of the shenanigans that Biden was into. It's all been corroborated. Bob Alinsky came out. He was literally the partner for the Biden crime family and came out and said, all of this stuff is real. I paid Joe Biden 10% off the top of this. I conducted meetings with him and other foreign officials. All of this stuff, I guess you can create a story however you want to, sure. And it's not like the powers that be did not try to frame Matt Gaetz' dad with CP, to try and hang up that whole family. So yes, there is a possibility that, that you can do things like that, but not in this case. This is ironclad. The guy did it. He is 100% responsible for the destruction that's happened to his family, the destruction that's going on in America. And the quicker you wake up and the quicker you see that that's happening and start fighting with us against it, the better our nation will be.
I would totally agree. The other thing is Ashley Biden's diary, because they raided O'Keefe over that. And I thought it was funny because, again, a lot of people said that was a conspiracy theory. It's not actually real. Then it gets corroborated and it's like, oh, but they broke the law. Right. By even raiding them and seizing the diary, they're admitting that the diary actually is real, is someone else's property. And when I think about like showers with Ashley and stuff like that, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I read.
Is there a reason why this is not being reported on? Because it seems damning. And I can imagine if if Ivanka Trump, right. If Don Jr. says, oh yeah, Dad was showering with me when I was 8 and felt uncomfortable or something, and he's playing with himself.
And maybe that's the reason why I have sexual issues to this day. It's like I read the contents of the diary, did not hold the diary in my hand. Don't come knocking on my door, please. But
disclaimer.
Yeah, exactly. But, I read the contents that were published online and wrote a report about it for the Daily Caller. And I think the craziest part about this is that the administration has a way, like you said, of verifying the fact that these things are real without coming out and saying this thing is real. You don't have the FBI and the DOJ coming down the throat of James O'Keefe for nothing. Yeah. If it's a stupid tabloid story, you let it run its course. It's the same thing like with Michelle Obama and like all of the jokes about her being a man. The FBI isn't coming down anyone's door for that type of joke. So if this was a hoax, if this was not something real, his phone would not have been stolen. All of his electronics wouldn't have been tampered with. These kinds of things only happen when the regime is threatened by something. And it's a really big threat when the president's daughter comes out and says, all of my mental health issues might stem from the fact that I had to take showers with my dad long after I recognized this was a wrong thing to do. She talked about punching herself in her private parts because she was so ashamed of the stuff that had happened, and maybe she had seen her dad with a sexual partner.
Oh, I didn't see that part of the diary. I just saw the showers with Ashley part. That's news to me, actually.
Yeah, that's
Breaking news, Joe Biden even crazier. He looks like the elderly version of the Deliverance banjo kid, by the way.
Right.
I will always use that remark.
It's so sad. Whenever I see people try and portray him as like the doting dad or the doting grandfather, I always think back to that diary, or I always think back to the laptop, because if you have a son that is as troubled as Hunter Biden, how can you in good conscience send him out to the biggest thugs in the entire world? And that is one of the points that Emma Jo Morris made in the documentary. She's like, if I were in this bad of a way and I was this hurt by everything that was going on, my parents would say, come home, get well. Let me take care of you. Let's get you healthy again. There's no chance that they'd be sending her out to the biggest oligarchs, the biggest gangsters and thugs, to the CCP, all of these places in order to go and do oil deals and land deals and, behind the scenes access to the vice president. You just wouldn't be getting that. I mean, you cannot tell me that he is a good, competent, healthy person and willing to do that. And honestly, his dementia is probably a bit of like comeuppance. Like, he deserves to spend his last days losing his mind for the way he treated his family.
I wouldn't say that, because I had a grandpa that had dementia, so I wouldn't wish that on anyone myself. So disclaimer, that's not my opinion, but he definitely deserves something. I mean, mainly force him to resign and shuffle him off, send him back to Rehoboth Beach or something like that.
Yeah, I guess I probably shouldn't be so harsh on people that have dementia. I just have very little sympathy.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I have very little sympathy for a man who would do something like that to his family. Family is the most important thing in my life. And it is the reason why I do what I do, to protect not only my children, but my sisters and my parents and all of these things that are going around me. And to have a man like that, who has the most power in the world, to be using his family rather than protecting his family, is just disgusting.
And that is what it appears with Hunter Biden. It's basically like, well, I can't do this business deal on my own, but I really need the money. Oh, right. Hey, Hunter, come over. I love you, son. You're going to Ukraine.
And it's one of the, it's
go
one
and meet
thing
with this cartel member.
Right. It's one thing to be using his brother to be doing all these things, but to invoke the use or the skin skeleton or whatever of your deadbeat son is just, it's abhorrent. The whole thing is gross.
If you had any final remarks with regards to the documentary, I'd like to briefly read the super chats here.
Sure.
And then I know we're running up on an hour. So if you had, anything to shout out, you've got a website, anything like that where people can find you. I know you work for the Daily
can go
Caller,
to Twitter. I'm at Mary Rooke _ on Twitter. And then just go to dailycaller.com and subscribe to the Patriot section. We not only have rigged up live and loaded for y'all, but there's previous documentaries that we've done on the transgender cult and, how they've captured our kids. And then we're also coming up, we have several documentaries, one about the higher education system and how that's been captured, and just try and wake people up to that. I mean, I know that a lot of people have been a little bit more aware of what's going on there, but parents should really understand what they're sending their kids into whenever they're sending them off to college now. So go to Twitter at Mary Rooke _ and thedailycaller.com. Those are the two most important.
All right. So I'm going to read out a few super chats here really quickly, and then we'll wrap up and we'll talk briefly after the live stream, I think. Drennan, listening to you while out on a walk by the Potomac River. Interesting. Occam's Razor, glad seeing a fellow Catholic on here. Mary does good works. Some words of affirmation there.
Yay.
Opinionated Junkie. Hey, Sticks, funds from trading options. I'm loving it. Just don't pace Nancy Pelosi or the FBI will knock on your door. Baron Von Blair. Happy Friday, Mary, Sticks, and Clankers. No one's having more fun than us. Yeah, it's a great time. And Mary, by the way, great talking with you, too. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's been fun. I'm really happy to have been a part of this. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
not only just good to talk about the documentary and all the craziness that's going on, but it's good to be able to talk about some of the things that a lot of other places are too scared to bring up.
Yeah, they won't address it. Jason Lane, it's just a conspiracy theory that Biden will be replaced sometime in March, and suddenly a story comes out that has enough lead time to justify him being removed in March. Yes, the chance of Joe Biden being replaced has increased over the last 48 hours. I would say to people, as I analyzed this morning, it will not be Michelle Obama, however.
Right. I don't think so either. Who do you think it'll be? If they, I mean, just saying, a wild chance they do actually end up replacing him, who do you think it'll be? Because I have Newsom. Okay. See,
Newsom.
I think that's the obvious choice because obviously he did the debate with Ron DeSantis and all of that stuff. I think that there might be a dark horse in there for someone like Cory Booker, like no one really thinks about, but he's got a lot of power. He's leading the Senate on the Dem side. You never know.
Think about how disliked Kamala is when Dark Horse is probably a step ahead of her in the replacement race. So.
I know. It was like that James O'Keefe video where the guy's like, the only person the American people hate more than Joe Biden is Kamala Harris. And it's like,
that's why we're all hoping, Joe, please stay alive. Assassins. I would kill the assassin myself if someone took a shot at Joe Biden right now.
Exactly.
No, please. The alternative is so much worse. Elisha Jones, the whole goal of the U.S. was to sell our home in the suburbs and buy a home with acres in the country, and we feel pretty stuck because of Bidenomics. Yeah, I'm glad that we have land here. I can sympathize. Bill Vetter, where do I find this documentary? Great interview, Sticks, and you as well, Mary. Thank you. I will put a link after we're off in the description. I'll pin it at the top on YouTube to the actual documentary. Mary, if you can, by the way, send that to me on Twitter DM.
Yeah.
Have a daily. Yeah, I'll post that. I've only got the trailer right now. Doc Holliday. Good call on the guest, Sticks. Like your energy. Just followed Mary on Twitter. I will be following later as well. The Dashing Rogue. Everyone talks about January 6, 2021, but no one talks about December 2020 and the USPS tracking numbers and the threats over Twitter towards DNC and RNC. Yeah, I vaguely remember that one. Again, it gets disappeared from the news. Jack the Reaper, another shining day for America when our president being too stupid to stand trial. Yeah, we discussed that. That was a good one. Salte, hey guys, be wary of the upcoming New York 3rd congressional seat on 213. Mazi Pilip versus Tom Suozzi. The seat was previously held by George Santos. Then Dashing Rogue, we already addressed your second comment. 2-liter J, the 20-year-old douchebag Poe Pimpster. Stick 666, I love you. Oh, thank you very much. Interesting username. The Engaged Few. I think Biden looks like Jeff Dunham's puppet Walter. Every time he talks, I expect him to start complaining about his wife and bullying a jalapeno on a stick. I don't get the reference. Irritated Kitty. The media and government have run cover and always make excuses for Joe. How is this legal? It's not, but they make the laws. So, they can get away with it. Carson 87. Don't forget that Joe Biden uses Beau Biden's corpse as a shield for his own self-interest. And the Gunslinger, pray we solve these problems by way of ballot box. There's a few chats over on Rumble as well. I will get to those actually afterward, but I'm going to let Mary go here. Again, you can follow her on Twitter. It's Mary_Rourke, or was it
it's
Rourke?
Mary Rooke _.
Okay, so I'll be following you later.
All
and
right.
so, yeah, any final comments? Anything about rigged?
Yeah, just go out and vote. I know that there will be a lot of black pills and a lot of people telling you that it's not worth it. And the same things in 2020 are going to happen, but it does not matter. If you do not vote, we are guaranteed to lose, and we need to overpower the numbers. The one thing that we talk about in Rigged is how they use the ballot harvesting or the ballot absentee ballot scheme against us. And it's time Republicans start playing fire with fire. That's not to say do anything illegal. That is to say, find out what your state laws are and make sure if you cannot make it to vote on election day, you put in your absentee ballot. These things are important, and it is important to register to vote so that your vote gets counted and you don't wake up on election day and realize you could have when you can't.
I think that we both agree, by the way, another great resource is Scott Pressler.
Yeah.
Who really, he should, other than Lee Zeldin, he would be the shortlist for RNC head.
Oh, for sure.
That
And
would be,
he's
it
the
won't
workhorse.
happen, but it should happen.
He's the workhorse of the Republican Party, and to say anything different is a lie.
Yeah, he's a cool dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Mary, it was a great conversation with you. I'm going to let you go off now. Again, the Rigged documentary, I will pin at the top on YouTube and cross-platform. I'll retroactively edit it into the description. I've only got the trailer on there right now. So
Perfect.
yeah, it was great talking to
dailycaller.com,
you.
everybody. Go to dailycaller.com and go ahead and subscribe.
Yeah, not legacy media, like
Exactly.
actual journalism. It's refreshing.
Exactly. We do the real news there.
Yeah, very little news in the news these days. All right, Mary, I'm going to let you go here, and I will continue with the last super chat here and a few of the Rumble rants.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for
having me. It was nice
having me.
talking to you.
All right, bye.
Bye. All right, so now we've got a few more super chats here. That was Mary Rooke, of course, from the Daily Caller. You can follow along with them. Mary Rooke _ on Twitter. That is her handle there. Good conversation. So let's get to this. Chika Fujiwara, I've been a fan since 2017. You do great work, Sticks. Thank you very much. Gorgeous Mayhem. Something tells me the inner city black and brown folks will be a lot less willing to help Dems cheat in 2024. Yeah, Hispanic voters have definitely climbed off the Biden bus. Please send no more super chats, by the way. I got a few more to process through before I go, and I want to take a hike and a few things. What do fuck did Biden say the true part out loud when he claimed he got the president of Mexico to open the gate? Makes more sense than most of his ramblings. It appears so, my friend. It appears so. Sigilstone, tits or GTFO. We are kind to our guests on Sticks Hexenhammer broadcast, so I do not appreciate this. I do not appreciate you. You remember that meme? I'm not mad. It's okay. You're a troll. You know, you shit on people's graves and stuff. The Nerdwire, 80 million scoops of ice cream for $1, Bob. Russ Hanneman, you fucking rule. Oh, I may low-key agree with you. Heritage Heirloom Seed Company, when is McDaniel going to be gone? RNC needs fresh blood that aren't rhinos. Oh, hopefully she goes away as quickly as possible. She's saying after South Carolina, or that's the report. The allegation is she told Trump, hey, well, I'm staying on through South Carolina, and then I'm going to fuck off. Even odds are that another neocon replaces her, though. Sigilstone. We'll make a documentary about Joe and the life of the Bidens. There'll be plenty of piss and shit and cum and blood and sweat. Ooh, and the sweat, we'll call it the aristocrats. You couldn't really make a documentary about the Biden sexual lives without creating illicit porn, unfortunately. That family is a little bit fucked up. DH1776, Haley switching parties? No, she'll stay a Republican because she's a masochist. She's actually a good Republican. She loves losing. BWOO, you should go on Dr. Turley's show, Sticks. I think he and you could debate this. He says that Joe is the best they have. The funny thing is, because of the incumbency, technically he would be more viable than a replacement. That's the weird part. Sigilstone, you fucker. You ruined the joke. Can't imagine why you wanted her to go before reading the rants. Lol. Yeah, there was a reason for that, and you were one of them, Sigil. Christ. 2-liter J, the 20-year-old douchebag Poe Pimpster. Hashtag DeSantis 2024. Yeah. No, I mean, he could beat Haley out in a number of Super Tuesday states just by existing. I mean, she's not going to have any support after South Carolina. So anyway, yeah, that was a special broadcast. I thank you to the almost 4,000 people who watched live. Again, we had Mary Rooke on. You can follow her on Twitter. I will get that link to you. I guess I'm going to be DM'd the link to the actual documentary, probably the YouTube upload of it, or maybe Rumble. And I'll post that, especially on YouTube. I'll pin it at the top when I do get that link. Of course, it's, well, actually, is it? What day of the week is it? Oh, yeah, it is Friday. So I do not go live Saturday or Sunday. I'll return to my normal streaming schedule next week. Right now, though, I'm taking the afternoon off. I'm going to do a bit of hiking, a bit of charcoaling, take some plant pictures or something, snow pictures this time of year mainly, and it'll be fun. So yeah, I'll be back on Monday with more streaming. And by the way, I do a pre-recorded segment with Elijah Schaefer actually tonight. I don't know when he'll get it up. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure, but I am going to have a discussion with him. He contacted me. Cool dude. That's about all. Peace out.